Hello, everybody. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my YouTube webinar, Spiritual Sense. And in this podcast, I go over a variety of topics in regards to the paranormal, such as hauntings, presences, demons, angels, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, to name a few. I also incorporate tarot card reading into this podcast as well. And so today is Tuesday, which is December the 21st, and I decided to do the topic for the day, which is curses. Okay. So this podcast is an open social dialogue in regards to the paranormal. It is for entertainment purposes. I am not using this podcast to be offensive or cause any type of inflammatory type of discussions or debate. It is optional, okay? So we're going to begin today speaking about curses. What is a curse? So as defined here, it says I have two definitions as defined with the website that I'm on. It says a solemn utterance intended to evoke a supernatural power to inflict harm or punishment on someone or something. The second definition says an offensive word or phrase used to express anger or annoyance. So we're going to proceed with Wikipedia's depiction on what a curse is. So let me pull up some information here. And as you know, Wikipedia has some very extensive information whenever you go on there. So I'm not going to go over all of the information that's here. I will touch around some of the information. So it says a curse, also called imprecation, malediction, hex, execration, malison, anathema, and combination is any expressed wish that some form of adversity or misfortune will befall or attach to someone or more persons, a place, or an object. In particular, curse may refer to such a wish or pronouncement made effective by a supernatural or spiritual power, such as a god or gods, a spirit or a natural force, or else as a kind of spell by magic, usually black magic or witchcraft. In the latter sense, a curse can also be called a hex or a jinx. In many belief systems, the curse itself, accompanied by a ritual, is considered to have some causative force in the result. To reverse or eliminate a curse is something called removal or breaking, as the spell has to be dispelled and is often requiring elaborate rituals or prayers. So it does go a little bit more into description as to different types of curses, and I will proceed to go into that now. It says that curses comprises a significant proportion of the study of both folk religion and folklore. The deliberate attempts to levy curses is often part of the practice of magic. It mentions in Hindu culture, the sage or rishi is believed to have a power to bless and curse. Examples include the curse placed on rishi, and the one placed on Rishi Davala. So the curse placed on Rishi Berrigu and the one placed by Rishi Davala. Special names for specific types of curses can be found in various cultures. To name a couple, we have the African American hoodoo, which represents the jinx and cross conditions, as well as a form of foot trail magic, which was used by Ramandeep, whereby cursed objects are laid in the path of victims and activated when walked over. Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cultures is a source of the belief in the evil eye. which may be the result of envy, but or morality. It is said, rarely, I should say, is said to be the result of a deliberate curse. In order to be protected from the evil eye, a protection item is made from a dark blue circular glass with a circle of a white around the black dot in the middle, which is reminiscent of a human eye. The size of the protected eye item may vary. It mentions in German cultures, including the Pennsylvania Dutch, speaks in terms of Hetzen, and a Hetz, a common Hetz in days past was that laid by a stable witch who caused milk cows to go dry and horses to go lame. Okay, so it does go over some biblical verses in regards to curses, and I will name a few. It says the Bible depicts God cursing the serpent, the earth, Cain in Genesis 3:14, 3:17, and 4:11. Similarly, Noah curses Canaan in Genesis 9:25. Joshua curses the man who should build the city of Jericho in Joshua 6:26 through 27. In Variety's book of the Hebrew Bible, there are a long list of curses against transgressors of the law, Leviticus 26:14 through 25, Deuteronomy 27:15, and etc. The 10 plagues of Egypt preceding the 10 commandments can be seen as curses cast from the rods of Aaron and Moses acting on the instruction of God of Israel, in order to enable the enthralled to come free from the yoke of the enforced serfdom, slavery, and the like. In the New Testament, Christ curses the barren fig tree, which is in Mark 11:14. It says it pronounces his enunciation of woe against the incredulous cities, which is mentions Matthew 11:21 against the rich, the worldly, the scribes, the Pharisees, and foretells the awful malediction that is to come upon the damned in Matthew 25:41. So it also goes in terms of the word curse is also applied to the victim of expiation for sin. Galatians 3:13. To sins temporal and external, Genesis 2:17 and Matthew 25:41. It goes a little further in regards to Egyptians and mummies. It says there is a broad popular belief in curses being associated with the violation of the tombs of mummified corpses or the mummies themselves. The idea became so widespread as to become a pop culture mainstream, especially in horror films, to name a few. So it says the curse of the Pharaohs is supposed to have haunted the archaeologists who excavated the tomb of Pharaoh Tunkeman, whereby an imprecation was supposedly pronounced from the grave by the ancient Egyptian priest or anyone who violated its precincts. So it says that there was an invisible series of mysterious death that was reported to have occurred. Similar dubious suspicions have surrounded the excavations and examinations of the natural, not embalmed alpine mummy. They have an Otzi, the Iceman. While such curses are generally considered to have been popularized and sensationalized by the British journalists of the 19th century, ancient Egyptians were in fact known to place curse inscriptions on markers protecting temples or tomb goods or properties. So I'm going to give you an example as to what my depiction of that is. A lot of people don't believe in curses. But let me explain something to you. Curses are real, whether you believe in them or not. They are. There is a sense of confusion and misguidance and a sense of loss of direction and where to go is a curse. And oftentimes, we like to give a scientific definition as to what a curse may be for our understanding in the physical, natural sense of it all. But, there are ways to, by use of scare tactics, psychology, to name a few, to invoke curses. Oftentimes we as people, when we have power or when we feel like we have power, we like to manipulate that power to our own liking, whether it be favorably or unfavorably. Well, you got to understand these things are being done under the guidance of spirits. And many times it's been done under the guidance of a demonic spirit. Okay. So whatever you choose to allow to be the forefront in your life is where it would be at. So say for instance, I'll give you an example. I do believe God gives us the power of choice and free will. However, I do believe that if you honestly and sincerely want him to guide you through your path in life and to protect you from those who seek to steal, kill, and destroy, he would do that as well. So many a times some things may work out unfavorably, but it's still under the guidance of God, under the spirit, meaning God. You can call it whatever you want to call it, essentially that. Okay. So you may not want to give power to the actual word of curse, but essentially that's what it is. Okay. So there are objects that it mentions about in regards to being cursed. Cursed objects are generally supposed to have been stolen from their rightful owners or looted from a sanctuary. The Hope Diamond is supposed to bear such a curse and bring misfortune to its owner. The stories behind why these items are cursed vary, but they usually are said to bring bad luck or to manifest unusual phenomena related to their presence. So it has an example here about Busby stoop chair was reportedly cursed by the murderer, Thomas Busby, shortly before his execution, so that everyone who would sit in it would die. Okay, I'll give you a depiction as to what I feel that is. Some things are deemed for a person, literally, like this is my personalized thing that is deemed for me. This is what God has for me. This is what my communicating vessel is for me. This is something of sacred to me. Okay. So say for instance, I have this ring here that I just purchased. Okay. I wear this ring and I only had this ring, maybe a week now. And as I begin to, wear the ring, my energy begins to impermeate into that ring. Somebody that is susceptible or sensitive to picking up energies, if they steal this ring, if I placed a curse on the ring, because the ring wasn't a whole lot of money, so but it in essence it's still my ring. Okay, so saying this to say, if I was somebody that held this ring to be of a high regard, like over human life, and somebody steals this ring, and I placed a curse upon that ring, as a result of that, because of those desires or me putting that energy into the value of what this ring is to me. As a result, if just so happens somebody touch it or even steal it, that curse has been placed on that ring. That's what I'm getting at. It has been cursed and been placed on that ring. So Some things that you hold dear and true to you, that is your sacred remnant of your personal relationship to God, is very, very valuable. So in a sense, that's what a curse is. Okay. Now we're going to proceed to some more information in regards to curses. Many people may not believe in curses, but curses are real. And I give you a couple of depictions as to things that I have researched in the past in regards to curse. I'm pretty sure many people have heard of the Superman curse. If you are somebody who was actually fond of Superman, or fond of those type of programs, paranormal type of programs where they spoke on curses and things of that nature. The Superman curse, where it was a lot of things that transpired with those individuals who played Superman. Okay. And how there was some things to occur within the atmosphere in the first Superman, I think the second Superman, and I think a total of 3. And it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of creepy. What's going on with this? Also, in mention of the the Brandon Lee curse, or the curse with Bruce Lee, or what have you. How a lot of things that was told to him, for him to keep on the inside, and he indulged those things to the world. And as a result of doing that, he was plagued by his demons. He was battling his inner demons and stuff. So I haven't done too much extensive studies in regards to the Bruce Lee curse, but I do feel as though God uses celebrities and certain individuals and people who are way known, like who are known across the media or mass communications, and he will use that as an example. This time and this space is as an example to alert you. This is something that you do not do. Getting back to the whole thing in regards to the Jesus agenda. This is what you don't do. Plain and simple. We do not tolerate this. So I think that's essentially, because I did read a book on Bruce Lee and the things that transpired with him. And, it was, when the autopsy came about or what have you, they wrote one thing, but hey, it is what it is. So, and I do understand, as I sit here and think and speak on this, a lot of times you don't want to, tattle over or meddle into, as the saying goes, let sleeping dogs lie. Okay. And so that was a situation that occurred, I feel like, with that particular situation. Now, in terms of the ancient Egyptian curses, because I have, watched many programs, and I have done some research in the past in terms of, the curse of a lot of the tombs and things like that. Of course, this been thousands of years ago, so the air quality within those tombs are not going to be up to par. So many of those people die as a result of the air quality within those tombs. However, that is how curses work. That is how curses work. Everything will be put into place for your demise or for your downfall. That's essentially how it works. In terms of curses. Curses are real. You know, you may not refer to it as a curse. You might just say, okay, bad luck, or that's life, or whatever, what have you. I mean, and that's true. We all going to experience some things in life that's unfavorable. Okay. But when in terms of when you deal with certain things in life, it's considered a curse, plain and simple. Okay, so I'm going to proceed with a video that I have pulled up off of that I have pulled up here in regards to curses. And so, if you give me just a moment, I'm going to pull that up now. And I'm going to proceed to play this video, but I'm trying my best not to get all the other extra dialogue in, so bear with me just a moment while I do that. Okay, so I'm going to proceed to share my screen, and so I could go ahead and get this video played within my presentation. So just a moment.
Curses. Some people call them generational curses, but at the end of the day, they're really about something or situations that are ailing a current generation in a family. So let's get into what that really means. Let's define what an ancestral curse is. As I said earlier, it's about a situation or conditions that are affecting a current generation. And so an ancestral curse, if you will, can one, be passed from one generation to the other. That's why it's called ancestral. People oftentimes are not sure when that started, but that is something they can find out. But when did this really start in that lineage, passed down from one family member to another, or one group of family members to another? The other one is it can be on both sides, or it can be on either side. It's carried on the side of the male or the father. It's carried on the side of the mother or the females. Or it can be carried on both sides. It just happens that they meet in the middle for that generation. Also, it can skip a generation, which a lot of people don't even really realize. And it can also skip people within that generation. Example, maybe there are 5 siblings in a family, and everyone is fine except for 2 people. Or everyone is fine on this side, but not fine on this side. That's what I mean about can skip different people. So we want to think about these vibrations, really. They can manifest themselves spiritually or physically. And so I'm going to get into a little bit about how does it manifest spiritually or physically, so that you can kind of have a fuller idea of what that means. So how do these curses come about? Because I personally don't like the word curse, but I recognize it's a real word. So how does it come about? Well, in my experience, it first comes through negative intentions. Almost every single time it comes about through some kind of negative intention or negative conditions. In other words, people who are living in really bad conditions, that they internalize the vibrations of those bad conditions and now passes it on to other people. Maybe it's children through childbirth and so on. Negative intentions, people cursing someone, saying bad things, mind magic, thinking negatively too much about this person or their conditions, evil eye. People say, oh, I don't believe in that. I believe in that. And it does play a role for some people, right? Real curses, where someone curses the person or curses their family. An example of that could be where it says, a person says, none of your children will prosper. I'll talk a little bit about how that can come to light later on, right? So some people they're told, don't curse people because it will happen, right? So this could be an example of how this whole thing starts. Someone says something and now it has rippling effects over generations, right? And of course, negative witchcraft. This is one of the big ways, I've told you the top 4 of how this can manifest in family lines. How do curses operate, or how do they affect people? So curses can have an activation point where after people become a certain age, all of a sudden it starts to happen. That's not all curses, family or ancestral curses, but some of them do operate that way. Example, for people who, in terms of one category is childbirth, right? So women, they can continuously abort. They can continuously have stillborns, or the children don't make it all the way to term. Children who are disabled, can't get pregnant. All of those fall in the same category, right? Where the line or people are not able to procreate to carry on the line. For men, it can be they're sterile. They are not able to have a high sperm count. They're not able to kind of impregnate someone continuously. This also can be due to some family problem, right? Then we can talk a little bit about death, how that shows up. So some people, their life dies early, right? They could be having major problems where they just kind of get stuck in their life. It could be that they become incarcerated, right? It could be that there's severe substance abuse. It could be that they have minimal growth. They have a lot of poverty, or they're never happy. They cannot seem to prosper. As soon as they start to get on top, things just fall down. They get on top and they fall down again. Severe depression or emotional problems. Oftentimes, some of these things are perpetuated through ancestry. Years ago, I have a client who, when they came to me, they kept talking about there's something wrong in their family. This woman thought that something was going to happen to her son. She said, I would keep thinking that something was going to happen to him. And so we had a full conversation about not putting out all that kind of negative energy. But then she brought up this idea that her brothers had all been incarcerated. They all had been the route of substance abuse. Her sisters, all their sons were incarcerated, and so on and so forth, right? So that's an example of this wilting, this contracting of the family line by way of the men. Why? Because we love our men, right? They're the ones that carry on our bloodline. They're the ones that are some of the biggest providers in families. They're the ones that help to balance the mother and the father, and so on and so forth. Well, if you start to destroy that part of lineage, eventually the lineage can die, right? So again, showing another example of how these things can work their way out. So one last thing that I'd like to say, because people are oftentimes asking, how do I break this? How do I break this? Someone told me I had it. You can only break your particular chain, your particular problem, and how that may affect your children. But you breaking it for yourself, it's almost impossible to now break it for the entire family. You being that one person, to now do one exercise, maybe on yourself or one ritual that's going to fix the whole family. Other people in your family can do things, and then you can generate a lot of energy together. But you by yourself cannot fix the whole lineage problem. I've never heard of it. If you hear about it and you see proof of it, I want to learn that system. The other thing is, it's very, very important to know and be empowered that by you, if you are a person that is carrying some kind of generational or ancestral problem, as we've discussed, you can break that. You can get help to break that. How do people break this? First, through ritual. I don't care what tradition you're in, you got to do some kind of ritual. Taking a spiritual bath is not going to remove this problem. I've never seen that. Why? Because it's in your DNA, it's in your blood. So if you're taking a shower every day, how are you getting inside of your body, right? How are you getting inside of your aura? It's locked into your aura. So you need to do some kind of ceremony, spiritual work, altar work, definitely with some instructions. Getting involved in traditions such as these, because traditional practices are some of the most effective ways, or the methods that they provide are some of the most effective in breaking permanently ancestral problems. And I would have to say that in your journey of kind of putting some of this to rest, pray for your ancestors, pray to heal things that have been broken with them. Pray that some of these issues are mitigated. I wanted to say one part that I missed earlier in the video is, how do some of these curses come about? Because I know some of you guys are asking yourself that question. So I've seen land disputes. Someone has a border, they curse the people on the other side. I've seen that. I've seen people where it is that the mother and the father of that person, they really weren't supposed to be together, according to the family. They didn't want that. They said, oh, you're not going to have kids with that person. They're not going to grow up to be anything, whatever the case may be, right? In addition to extramarital affairs. That's a big, 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 one of the biggest ones that I've seen that have also perpetuated or contributed, started, made happen ancestral curses. And so, things to keep in mind, no family is perfect, but I hope that in hearing some of this information today, you're empowered, you're totally empowered to help break some of this. If not for yourself, and hopefully you don't have that, but definitely to help a friend. Definitely share this video. Please join our whole community of people who are subscribers.
Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so that is some real good information from her in regards to curses.
Be in tune with our notifications.
And let me exit this screen. And so I do have another video that I am wanting to pull up. And I don't think the video is too long in regards to curse. Let me take a look and see if I'm able to pull up a video that won't be too long of a video.
1922, a British.
Okay, so bear with me just a moment. Let me share my screen again. And we're going to proceed with this next video.
world-famous discovery. Howard Carter was employed to Lord Carnarvon, who is eager in excavations and archaeological findings. With continuous interruption of World War I, Lord Carnarvon was dissatisfied and wanted to discover something significant. As a result, Howard Carter was assigned with his crew to dig in the Valley of the Kings, Egypt. In November 1922, a young water boy in the excavation site accidentally stumbled on a stone that turned out. When the stone dug out, Carter found a doorway stamped with indistinct cartouches. Carter immediately sent a telegram to Carnarvon about his finding. Carnarvon arrived at the Valley of the Kings immediately with his daughter to witness the historical event. On the 26th of November 1922, with the presence of Carnarvon, his daughter, crew members including news reporters and photographers, Carter made a tiny breach in the top left-hand corner of the doorway. Carter, Carnarvon and everybody else were fascinated with the finding of Tutankhamun's burial chamber with the treasure of over 5,000 artifacts made out of gold and ebony. Young King Tutankhamun, 1342 to 1325 BC. During the New Kingdom of Egyptian history, Tutankhamun was the last of his royal family to rule the end of the 18th dynasty. Tutankhamun took the throne at 8 or 9 years of age, succeeding his grandfather-in-law I. Tutankhamun restored the ancient Egyptian religion after its dissolution by his father. And he moved his father's remains to the Valley of the Kings, as well as moving the capital from Akhetaten to Thebes. He was physically disabled with a deformity of his left foot along with bone necrosis that required the use of a cane. Also, he had other health issues including scoliosis and had contracted several strains of malaria. Young King Tutankhamun died in 1325 BC at the age of 18 or 19. There are no surviving records of the circumstances of Tutankhamun's death. It has been the subject of considerable debate in major studies. Murder by a blow to the head was theorized as a result of the 1968 X-ray, which showed 2 bone fragments inside the skull. Curse of the Pharaohs. Upon the opening of young King's tomb, involved crew had to face tragic incidents including even deaths. Some report shows by 1924, about 24 of fellow excavators died in numerous reasons. Deaths popularly attributed to Tutankhamun's curse. George Herbert, 5th Earl of Carnarvon, financed the excavation of King Tut's tomb, was the first to succumb to the supposed curse. Lord Carnarvon accidentally tore open a mosquito bite while shaving and ended up dying of blood poisoning shortly thereafter. He died on the 5th of April 1923, few months after the opening of tomb. Sir Bruce Ingham, Howard Carter, gifted a paperweight consisted of a mummified hand wearing a bracelet. The bracelet engraved with a text of "Cursed be he who moves my body." Sooner Ingham's house burned to the ground and restoration was interrupted with continuous flood. George J. Gould was a wealthy American who witnessed tombs open. Sooner fell sick and died of a pneumonia a few months later. Aubrey Herbert, Lord Carnarvon's half-brother, died of sepsis after 5 months of Carnarvon's death. Hugh Evelyn White, an archaeologist, witnessed tombs opening, hung himself in 1924 after seeing tragic deaths of about 24 of fellow excavators. Before his death, he wrote a note, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear with his own blood." Aaron Ember, American Egyptologist who died on 1926 when his house burned down. He was a friend of most witnessed the tomb opening. At the time he was manuscripting a book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, based on the event. Richard Bethel was Lord Carnarvon's secretary and the first person behind Carter to enter the tomb, died in 1929 under suspicious circumstances. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed was the radiologist, X-rayed the mummy before given to museum authorities. Died after 3 days. James Henry Breasted, an Egyptologist, who took place in the event, however, returned immediately to home for a different reason. He didn't die until 1935, although his death did occur immediately after a trip to Egypt. A.C. Mace, a member of Carter's excavation team, died in 1928 from arsenic poisoning. Many authors and documentaries have argued that the curse is real, in the sense of having scientifically explicable causes such as bacteria or radiation. Tutankhamun's death marked the end of the royal line of the 18th dynasty, and he was buried in a tomb that was unusually small considering his status. His fame is primarily the result of his well-preserved tomb and the global exhibitions of his associated artifacts. Full tomb collection of King Tutankhamun is planned to exhibit in Grand Egyptian Museum in first quarter of 2020 after traveled over most of major cities across the world.
Okay. Okay, so that's it on the presentation in regards to the tomb. And as the video was playing, I did manage to pull up some information about 10 famous curses. I don't believe I'm going to go over all of the curses, but I'm going to touch bases on a few, okay? So in terms of Hollywood, as we know, Hollywood, you will begin to see a lot of how God will use individuals to spread a message. I do believe Hollywood being one of those mass communicative ways of conveying a message to the world, okay? So we're going to begin with 10. It mentions about James Dean and the curse of the little bastard is what it mentions. So it says September 30th of 55, James Dean was killed when the silver Porsche 550 Spider he called the little bastard was struck by an oncoming vehicle. Within a year of the crash, the car was at least loosely involved in 2 more fatal accidents and 2 other injuries. The better confirmed series of incidents occurred after hot rod designer George Barris purchased the car. While getting a tune-up, the little bastard fell on a mechanic's leg and broke them. 2 doctors supposedly purchased the engine and transmission from the car, of whom one was killed and the other seriously injured in subsequent car accidents. It says, though it hasn't been confirmed that the deaths occurred in cars that contain the parts of the car, okay? But it says that, it's a report here mentions that someone purchased a tire which blew simultaneously, sending the driver to the hospital. Now, this is something that I find to be very, very peculiar. The sale of the car, it says, disappeared sometime before 1960 while on an exhibition circuit. According to some, a truck carrying it crashed, killing the driver, and the little bastard were gone by the time the authorities arrived on scene. By other accounts, it was merely stolen en route. Either way, perhaps it's for the best that little bastard is off the roads. And that is so true. Whatever you put your energy and value towards, particularly when it's of materialistic means, okay? When a person holds materialistic items as a sense of value above another person's life, many of the times you will see how a lot of these curses are perpetuated. Now, that's not to say that, oh my gosh, you don't take care of your or appreciate materialistic things such as a car, house, or what have you. No, I'm not making that point because I know, the devil can come back and have something contrary to say to that. But when you put so much credence into it to where it's above another person's life, no. And I think this is something that God will use as an example in terms of the overindulgence or the over super, and trust and believe those who may be out there, maybe listening in or viewing in. I'm not judging anybody in what you buy, but I'm going to tell you, oftentimes this is what the spirit, the message is within the message, okay? So we're going to proceed to the curse of Tunkeman's tomb. In 1922, English explorer Howard Carter was leading an expedition funded by George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, when Carter discovered the tomb of ancient Egyptian king Tutankhamun and all the riches it held. After opening the tomb, however, strange and unpleasant events began to take place in the lives of those involved in the expedition. Some believe that there was a foreboding inscription: death comes on wings to he who enters the tomb of a pharaoh. On King Tut's tomb, that put a curse on anyone who disturbed his final resting place. So it says Lord Carnarvon's story in particular is the most bizarre. The adventurous Earl came to Cairo and apparently died from pneumonia following complications from a mosquito bite. Allegedly, at the exact moment Carnarvon passed away, all the lights in the city mysteriously went out in Cairo. So when you're going over, into these other unknown lands, these people are monitoring you and watching you and studying you. And you have to begin to understand that, we have espionage. We're being monitored in our travels, not only on homeland, but on other lands. And when you begin to be inquisitive, as they mentioned, Curious George, there's nothing wrong with being inquisitive where you just want to know. But sometimes in certain situations, particularly when you're dealing with sacred things, meaning things that people, this is what we want the world to know, but ultimately you keep things on the inside. So as the saying goes, Curious George, you have to be very careful where you place your hands in certain circumstances. And I'll just leave it at that. I would. So it says back in England, Carnarvon's dog fell over dead. In addition, several other people involved in the expedition died too, including Carter's assistant, his assistant's father, and some of Carter's relatives. Carter, however, seemed to escape the curse himself. Now, ain't that ironic? Now this right here, it mentions one about the Spider-Man. I'm not going to read that. It has some mentions here of a club, the 27 Club, which I never heard about. It said, if you're a rock star and you're about to turn 27, you might want to consider taking a year off to avoid membership in, quote unquote, the club. It says it's an exclusive club, as quoted here, that you just want to join. Take it mentions about example with Eric Clapton was quoted as saying the most important blues musician who ever lived, played the guitar so well that some said he must have made a deal with the devil. So when he died at 27, folks said it must have been time to pay up. Okay, so Johnson, a host of musical geniuses, have gone to an early grave at 27. Brian Jones, founding member of the Rolling Stones, died at 27 in 1969. There was both Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin in 1970, and Jim Morrison the following year. Kurt Cobain, the Club in 1994, and so did Amy Winehouse in 2011. All 27-year-olds. Now that is, I find that to be very, very peculiar. Is it a coincidence? A tragic combination of fame, addiction, and depression at a young age? Or were these musical geniuses paying debts too? I couldn't say. I do know curses are real. And and a lot of times what happens is when you get into a certain location, or you a certain land, or it's just like walking into a time warp, you will become that reality. Like, it is a strong force, it's a stronghold. So that's how I know, God put this in me years ago to where I can detect what that is. I kid you not. Now it has here number 6, it says the curse of Gillette. Gillette, the maker of the shaving products like Gillette Fusion power razors and producer of such helpful internet videos. It says, as Gillette's guide to body shaving may also be cursed, at least when it comes to its athletic promoters. It says of its most recent ambassador, Henry, Tiger Woods, and Roger Federer, for example. Each athlete's career may have been cut short by the razor's curse. In November 2009, soccer star Henry was accused of cheating during the World Cup's final. The same month, Woods' meteoric golf career lost serious momentum when he injured his knee and later got bad press from losing his temple at a tournament. And that was before his messy public divorce and the media frenzy of confessions from his mistresses. To complete the curse, in November of 2009, an undefeated Federer was knocked from the top spot in the tennis world tour by an underdog. In addition, the former face of Gillette soccer celebrity David Beckham seemingly suffered the effects of the curse for several years, even after the company ended its agreement with him. Beckham's footing as a fan favorite slipped so far that he was actually booed at a game in 2009. To some, it was proof that the curse could continue long after the commercials stopped airing. Let's see. Okay, so let me skip down to the Curse of Terran. If you believe in curses, you should also hope your family didn't originate from Hungary. This country is home to the Curse of Terran, which presents that Hungary and its people have been oppressed by a malevolent spell for centuries. The trouble started in 1000 AD when then despot King Stephen decreed that his people must convert to Christianity. Now all the country's inhabitants met the news with a willing spirit, though. A shaman believed to have psychic powers because he was born with 6 fingers on one hand, resisted the orders to leave the old religious ways behind. In protest, the shaman placed a 1,000-year curse on all Hungarians. In the years that followed, Hungary was on the wrong side of several state decisions, like supporting the Nazis and then being persecuted by German forces anyway. Its people are also believed by some to have experienced increased levels of personal despair and misfortune. As proof, some point to Hungary's inflated suicide rate. During much of the 20th century, the country had one of the highest suicide rates in the world, but since the 1,000-year mark has passed, perhaps the curse has passed with it. So it could very well be that these people was oppressed, and as a result of that, was forced to support things that wouldn't be considered right or within their benefit or means. Okay. Let's proceed on. It says Tecumseh's curse in the American presidents. The curse of Tippecanoe and Tecumseh's curse is a widely spread explanation for why, from 1840 to 1960, Every U.S. president elected or re-elected every 20th year has died in office. Rumor has it that Native American leader Tecumseh administered the curse when William Henry Harrison's troops defeated his forces at the Battle of Tippecanoe. So it says William Henry Harrison was elected president in 1840. He caught a cold during his inauguration, which quickly turned into pneumonia. He died April 4th of 1841 after 1 month in office. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860 and re-elected 4 years later. Lincoln was shot April 14th, 1865, and died the next day. James Garfield was elected president in 1880. Charles Gitto shot him in July of 1881. Garfield died several months later from complications following the gunshot wound. William McKinley was elected president in 1896 and re-elected in 1900. On September the 6th of 1901, McKinley was shot by Leon J who considered the president an enemy of the people. McKinley died 8 days later. 3 years later, after Warren G. Harding was elected president in 1920, he died suddenly of either a heart attack or stroke while traveling in San Francisco. Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president in 1932 and re-elected in 1936, 1940, and 1944. Although his health wasn't great overall, he died rather suddenly in 1995 of a cerebral hemorrhage or stroke. John F. Kennedy was elected president in 1960 and assassinated in Dallas 3 years later. Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980, and though he was shot by an assassin in 1981, he did survive. Some say this broke the curse. George W. Bush, who was elected in 2000, escaped and went on to serve a second term in office. So we have curse number 1. Now, this is the almighty curse of all curses that I want to get to. And I think I want to before I close out this presentation, I want to proceed to, if I can, speak on the Superman curse. Is what I think I will touch bases on, the Superman curse, if I can, but I have enough time to. So, number 1, the curse of the Kennedy family. All right, so maybe if this family had stayed out of politics and off of airplanes is what it has here, its fate might have been different. Regardless, the number of Kennedy family tragedies have led some to believe there must be a curse on the whole bunch. John F. Kennedy's brother, Joseph Jr., and sister Kathleen both died in separate plane crashes in 1944 and 1948, respectively. JFK, while serving as America's 35th president, was assassinated in 1963 at the age of 46. Robert Kennedy, JFK's younger brother, was assassinated in 1968. Senator Ted Kennedy, JFK's youngest brother, survived a plane crash in 1964. In 1969, he was driving a car that went off a bridge, causing the death of his companion, Mary Jo Kopechne, and ended his presidential goals during the investigation that followed. In 1984, Robert Kennedy's son, David, died of a drug overdose. Another son, Michael, died in a skiing accident in 1997. In 1999, JFK Jr., his wife and sister-in-law died when the small plane he was piloting crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so I'm going to, as I mentioned, pull up some information on the Superman curse. And I'm going to close out this presentation. So in the video that we did do and the discussion we went over, you know, I think most people at some point in time in their life will feel that they are cursed or under a curse or a spell. And I can honestly say that I do. You know, I feel like God was alerting me about generational curses at the age of, I want to say I had to be about 7 years old, you know, and visions and things that he would put into my third eye and, you know, inclinations that he would drop into my spirit. So, you know, he did let me know that a lot of the things was coming from the past. These are the spirits from the past, is what that is. Okay. So we're going to proceed with I'm just going to pull up a YouTube video because I'm not going to actually just a small video of the Superman curse, and then I will proceed to play that now. So bear with me just a moment while I get that let's see. Okay, so let me proceed to share my screen again, and I am going to play this Superman curse.
Is in fiction, and since the Man of Steel leapt onto the pages of comic books in a single bound back in 1938, he's been the star of a near endless amount of movies, television series, video games, and radio shows. And as a result of this, each generation since the 1940s has had their own Superman, whether it's George Reeves, Dean Cain, Henry Cavill, or perhaps the most famous take on the character, Christopher Reeve's Superman of the 1970s and 80s. However, with so many different actors donning the blue and red tights over the years, a strange pattern has begun to emerge, one where many actors who played the Man of Tomorrow have found themselves suffering terrible accidents and grave misfortunes later on in their careers. And
hey, Owen, so I could have swore
Okay, so give me just a moment and let me proceed past the infomercials or the
50 sequel, Adam Man versus Superman. Alan's early portrayals as the last son of Krypton very much set the precedent for what a live-action Superman would be like, presenting his superhuman abilities through a mix of wires and his own background in dance. However, Columbia Pictures canceled his Superman series in 1951. Alan struggled to shake off the looming blue and red shadow, with the actor ultimately blaming the role for ruining his career. And while Alan did later cameo in 1978's Superman the Movie, playing the father of Lois Lane, he never received another role quite like Superman and died March 14, 1999 at age 88.
possibly the most well-known example of the Superman curse is that of George Reeves, the actor who portrayed the hero in the 1950s Adventures of Superman TV series. Beginning in 1951 with the movie Superman and the Mole Man, the first ever theatrical film to be based on a DC character, Reeves donned the famous costume for 6 years appearing in 104 episodes as the iconic character. The show, developed by former Superman writer Whitney Ellsworth, very much embodied the many elements of the Man of Steel fans have come to love, including his origin story, his weakness to kryptonite, and his dual identity, with Reeves giving a near-perfect performance as both Superman and Clark Kent. Despite this, Reeves struggled both financially and personally, unable to find other roles to commit to after the show was cancelled in 1958, partly due to how closely identified he became as Superman. Reeves ultimately committed suicide on June 16, 1959, only days before the actor was to be married. While many believe there is a larger conspiracy regarding Reeves' death, this became the first fatality of the Superman curse and subsequently popularized the theory.
When it comes to live-action Supermen, the first name that comes to mind for most will still be Christopher Reeve. Reeves' Superman of the late 1970s and 80s perfectly encapsulates everything right and just about the character. While Reeves' take on the Man of Tomorrow is still considered by many to be one of the most iconic roles in cinema, the actor struggled, like those before him, to escape from typecasting. Even more unfortunately, the actor was paralyzed from the neck down after a horse riding accident on the 27th of May, 1995, and was confined to a wheelchair. Reeve later died on October 10th, 2004, at the age of only 52.
Furthermore, there are many other people who are considered to be victims of the Superman curse, who, although didn't portray Kal-El, were involved in a variety of projects for the character. The most notable, though, have to be that of Superman's creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The pair sold the rights to Superman over to DC Comics in 1938 for just $130 and spent decades trying to claim back royalties and rights that they felt they were owed by the company. While never quite gaining the rights back to Superman, they were awarded a lifetime pension of $20,000 a year by DC in 1976 and were credited in all works featuring the character onwards. Regardless, the pair spent much of their adult life fighting in court to reclaim their creation, and although Schuster passed away in 1992 and Siegel later in 1996, their family and heirs still campaign for copyright today.
The 1940s Superman cartoon series, produced by the Fleischer Brothers, was one of the most influential and impactful in the genre's history, influencing everything from Batman the Animated Series to the art stylings of Alex Ross. The Fleischer Brothers had previously created such cartoon series as Popeye and Betty Boop and seemed like the ideal candidates to produce a Superman cartoon, and while they did do just that, it wasn't accomplished without a lot of problems behind the scenes. Shortly after bringing Superman to life, the men behind the studio, brothers Max and Dave, began feuding with one another, and this resulted in the studio losing money fast, to the point where they were forced to sell the company to Paramount Pictures, which in turn ousted the pair from the studio. While Dave later found work as a special effects advisor for Universal, Max sadly died in poverty.
But while this does sound like Superman is very much a poisoned chalice, and anyone who dares attach themselves to the property will definitely suffer, this isn't exactly the case. Several actors have managed to play Superman and not find themselves cursed. For instance, Dean Cain, Brandon Routh, Tom Welling, and Henry Cavill have all had successful careers. While it's true that some genuinely sad and unfortunate things have happened to people who have worked on Superman projects over the years, Superman is one of the most popular and long-standing characters in fiction, and he's had a lot of adaptations over the years. And of those adaptations, 99% of people who worked on them have been largely fine. It's just the unfortunate few who make the headlines. What can mostly be attributed to just bad luck. But if that's the case, then why do so many people believe the curse exists? I think the real problem isn't so much the actors or the studios, but just the nature of the character itself. Superman is such an iconic role that it's understandable that audiences would come to see you as Superman if you've played the role for a significant period of time. He's such a beloved character across the world that he almost casts a looming shadow over the actors playing him. And in many ways, the character becomes much bigger than the actor. While you are seeing Christopher Reeves, Kirk Allen, Brandon Routh, George Reeves, Henry Cavill, etc., you're always seeing Superman instead. Sadly, even when they happen to be playing someone else.
Okay, so that was just a brief video in terms of the Superman curse, which is one of the curses that, you know, I've heard about of many curses. You do have generational curses, as I did mention or play in the first video in regards to, you know, if there was a curse on the bloodline or the lineage within your roots of, you know, family dynasties or, you know, some centuries ago, and that can forefront a lot of the things that are transpiring here today. Because as I mentioned before, you know, God will make it apparent to you that those spirits from the past will represent itself here in the now. And as I mentioned, you may not want to refer to it as a curse, but that is so. So getting back to, because it's so funny that they mention the same things that I mentioned in regards to, okay, such say for example with the Superman curse. Well, you know, you had many of people who, you know, played Superman who was not afflicted by the curse. And if you go on the Superman curse here on Wikipedia, it mentions about George Reeves, Christopher Reeve, that was afflicted by this curse. Other alleged victims, just to name a few, that has Marlon Brando, Margot Kidder, Richard Pryor, Diana Reeve, Jerry Siegel, and Joe Suster, Max and Dave Fleischer. It says the DVD crew, it's what it has listed here. Allison Mack. So it's more people who were surrounding that particular character who was also affected by this curse. Now, the ones who doesn't consider themselves cursed could very well be that they were aware of the curse and was prepared for it, but curses are real. And so if you go on Wikipedia, I mean, just give all accounts of the misfortunes and things that have transpired in this Superman enterprise. I mean, it may not necessarily be, you know, the actual character, but those that are surrounded by that character was affected by it, is the point. And so, and I'm not going to go too much in depth with that, but, you know, call it what you will. There is something in regards to curses. I do believe curses are real. You may not necessarily want to give power to it. You may not want to accept it, but it is real. It is real. Okay. So I am going to close out this presentation today on spiritual sense, speaking on curses, generational curses, as well as, you know, your everyday hits and misfortunes as such. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.